What? Oh, what is this? I'm fighting against giant penises. This is ridiculous. It just won't stop wiggling. Greetings, welcome one and all. I am SocioPsycho, and today I bring you Splatter Blood Red Edition. This is a top-down shooter with some story thrown in there by a company called Dreamworlds. You play as a character known as Max, and the whole purpose is to survive an alien or zombie outbreak. It's not really too clear. When we go into options, you have multiple difficulty options to choose from, and plenty of languages and some basic features. When we go into the graphic quality, there's plenty of screen resolutions, which is nice. Although graphically the game is not all that impressive, it's good enough to get by, but it's really not anything that is astonishing. The sound volumes are nice that they have it split up, as the music in this game is actually very well done, and it fits with the theme of the world to a T, and the voice acting of the characters. Again, they've put a lot of effort into those two categories. They really come out with a good quality in that phase. As you can see, all the keys are rebindable, and you got two sets. That's always nice. When we go into some of the modes that the game has, you have multiplayer and single player. In single player, you can basically just have survival mode. In multiplayer, you have survival mode or deathmatch. Survivor mode is pretty much just an endless wave that is continuously pouncing upon you, and you have to try to survive. In the deathmatch, you just basically, like any deathmatch, you attack other people. Now, is this enough to justify getting this game? Well, we'll see. Another very important fact that I want to bring up to you is the fact that the game does have leaderboards. After every mission, because the game is broken up by chapters or missions, as you like, whichever you prefer to think of it as, and at the end of that mission you get to see your score based on time and damage multiplier. That score goes onto the leaderboard, but unfortunately you cannot load back up in between. The way the story is split, it makes it so you can't go back onto one of the individual missions if you really want to try to get a better score on the leaderboard. They've put the effort into actually putting in a leaderboard system into the game, but then they kind of capped people on the knees because you have to replay through the game to be able to increase in your score. A better interface where the missions were split up and you could choose which one to go into would have completely made the leaderboards a more feasible option, instead of having to replay through the entire game to get to that mission where you wanted to better your score, and it would have made it more inviting to replay and try to get better. Now, like I said, the game does have a story element to it, and the voice acting is very well done, and I'm going to let you hear that right now.
And so I became aware that there was a planning entity in the background, now dropping its mask and openly throwing its troops against me. But yet, I'm standing.
Besides the annoyingness for people who may enjoy actual leaderboards having to go through monotony of tasks before you can get to that mission that you want to try to better your score on, how does the game actually play overall, and more importantly, is it even worth playing that much through again? The game runs to 5 to 6 hours, depending on your speed and capability and choice of difficulty. But the real question is the game actually worth fighting? Because if the combat's not enjoyable, then the game is not going to be worth replaying. This is where I find the major fault with the game, is the fact that the combat is not enjoyable. Now, as you go through the game, you do acquire multiple different weapons, and these weapons have different effects. And you fight through hordes of armies of different types of zombies and zombie-like creatures. But the issue comes from the fact that you control the battlefield the entire time, every time. You have flares that you can use. These flares will push back the enemy forces because they do not like the light that is emulated from the flare. So they avoid it and they push it back, and it allows you not to get over-swarmed. Now, this is a good mechanic, and the main issue is that they add so many flares into the game that you do not have the capability at any time not to have a flare unless you're wasting them. The availability of how many flares you have and how effective they are against the enemy makes it so every engagement you have complete control over the situation, and you don't have to worry about getting overrun because the enemy will not even be able to get close to you. Now, there are different types of monsters, and when it comes down to the different types, you have spiders, zombies that shoot fireballs, regular zombies, jumping zombies. It's very regular, and as you can see, the graphic fidelity of the game isn't anything that's overly amazing or inspiring, but at the same time it's not bad. It gets by for what it is, even though it's simple. But when it comes down to the enemy AI, whether the fact that they're critters and zombies and they're stupid, or the AI is just poorly programmed, because you can make an argument one for the other, with the abuse of the flares and the firepower of the weapons, and the dumbness of the AI, it's very easy to dodge around attacks. You literally have to stand still to get hit. Will you die? Yes, you will die. The enemy does do damage to you, and they will kill you if you allow them to. But it's not difficult to dodge out of danger or move out of danger. It's not hard to understand what the enemy is going to do. Because all the enemy creatures, minus a few, are melee creatures and you are ranged, the majority of the game comes down to simply kiting or bunkering up into a corner, throwing a flare, and just waiting them out to attack or picking them off slowly. The danger meter isn't one where it's overly complicated because, while yes, if those big guys are allowed to get close to you, they will one-shot you, but in between your flares and your weapons, that should never be an issue to begin with. So the fact that the enemy never really spunks it up, it never puts you in a situation where you feel in danger continuously, even to the point of the mini-bosses. Now, there are bosses and mini-bosses in this game, but they're not all that difficult. And as you can see here, I'm fighting automated robots. Yes, they will hurt and they will hit you if you allow them to. The way the level has been designed and how you're fighting in this corridor and you have to stay in small quarters is the fact that they are dangerous. Nice, yes, they have a laser weapon and they throw out small pellet grenades. But as you can see, at no point did I ever feel as if, oh no, I'm going to mess up and screw up. The AI is very easy to manipulate, and the challenge is not there. They are the same as all the other monsters in the game. They only have a beefier hit pool. And when it comes to the actual bosses, the first boss you come across in the game is actually the toughest. The rest of them are very easy to manipulate or defeat. And in this case we have this giant bug boss, but it's not a problem. He goes underground after you do enough damage to him and you either get closer, or you can actually just throw a grenade from one of your weapons into that area and he'll pop back up. So yes, he'll attack you if you get close to him, but there are ways around that. As well as the fact that you can get the right angle to where he is unable to hit you, and you actually have to mess up or be experimenting with weaponry to actually get hit. The bosses, the fact that they don't move very much, or they move in such a way that is very easy to manipulate, doesn't allow them to actually have a difficulty that is even replayable. The weapons only add to this fact even more. The weapons don't have any weight to them, and the one weapon that actually is of interest is a sort of laser cutting railgun. Beyond that, the rest of the weapons are actually very weak. How they are weak compared to how they feel does matter, and the weapons do not feel strong. Do they do some damage? Yes, the shotgun will take out some critters, usually one-shotting if you're hit the right angle, but it will definitely two-shot. That may be powerful, but when you're continuously going up against hordes and hordes and hordes of monsters, it's not anything to really blink an eye at. Because you have to kill so many, and the fact that your weapon one-shots a monster now and again isn't all that big of an achievement. But the weapons do not feel heavy, and that's the real problem. The fact that the weapons do not feel like they have any weight behind them or any special abilities. And what's different from this game in comparison to what it's lacking from other top-down shooters of, its genre, is the fact that you don't have any special abilities. In a game like this, you do come across turrets which play a role in the game, usually fighting against you. So why couldn't there be sort of little items that are consumables, such as a turret or a stim pack? You throw down a turret and it will provide guard, or you take a stim and it increases your attack rate and your movement speed. There are different ways they could have added things without breaking the reality of the game. You don't need to have some super sci-fi item in the game which completely is like, whoa, that's not the atmosphere we were going for. But with that, they didn't add other things into the game to actually add spice, replayability, and the option to play in different fashions is what hurts it the most. The combat gets very tedious and, more importantly, very repetitive very fast. Now, the story does progress, but the way the story progresses is that it doesn't actually tell you what's going on. It starts you off and you start in combat relatively soon, which I can respect and appreciate. But as the story progresses forward, you get a sense of the world, the standard apocalyptic, but it never explains exactly what is going on, and I feel like I'm missing story plot information. This game feels more like a sequel that doesn't relate any information from its predecessor, rather than a game of its own standing. Now, this may be true, and whether it is or is not doesn't matter, because when I'm playing the game, I really have very limited knowledge on what's going on, other than I'm the good guy, I'm the hero, I'm the badass, I'm killing these monsters, and there are survivor groups here and there. Now, the game does have some RPG story elements to it. Do you help this fella out? Do you take this fella? Do you do this side quest? Do you do that side quest? And as there really is no experience in this game, or really any leveling up, it's debatable if you want to waste your time on that or not. Now, I've done the side quests, and all I can really say that you get from doing those side quests is either the option of finding a golden mechanic upgrade piece for the pistol, which will make it a little bit stronger once you have completed the set, and money. And money in the game goes into upgrading your weapons. Each weapon has 4 levels of upgradability, and you will not be able to upgrade all the weapons on your playthrough. So you have to choose in between what you want and what you feel comfortable using. The most idealistic weapon to upgrade first is the pistol. Now, this may not be true for you, but for me it was a no-brainer, because the pistol has unlimited ammo. And that goes into another issue of the combat, because when they give you a weapon and you have unlimited ammo on your pistol, you don't have to be careful or clever or creative in how you fight the enemies or where you fight the enemies. Do you use flares to get around different areas? Do you try to stealth? Do you try to hide? You basically can just fire your way through the entire game without really worrying about the consequences of having to manage any resources, which could have added a level of difficulty to the game, but instead they added no ammo count worry. Now, they could have easily just as well made the pistol not unlimited ammo and added more pistol ammo or weapon ammo in general around the different maps, or made it become a drop. But the fact they didn't do this means you always have a weapon to fall back on, and that is another setback of the game actually. Now, I will state that the level is actually well done in how it is designed in scale. They are big levels, and it does propel you as you feel like you have to explore a lot of content before moving on to the next area. The issue is that this content is all very close quarters. You have your streets in between buildings, your alleyways, and building to building. Very little do you have the capability, and even if you had a vehicle in the game, you wouldn't be able to have a maneuverability of that vehicle to really go around and travel in between the levels. The level design may be large, but it is very linear, and it has different paths, but those paths lead into buildings. The downside of this is the fact that because the level design of the maps are so constricted, and because there is no option to actually have vehicles here and there on these different levels, now you will sometimes be given a vehicle to play with, but once again, you have to go down a straight path. It doesn't allow you to be fighting through a city courtyard and then find a vehicle and drive a vehicle around. This limitation is something that hurts the game even more. There are other games of this genre which implement vehicles, add a level of depth, in combat and replayability. Vehicles can be damaged by the enemy, or it could have a weapon count or an ammo count. The fact that they don't have availability for any vehicles in the game means that you are forced again and again and again to replay exactly the same way. And the few times that they do put you in a vehicle, they give you a driver, the story tells you that, they're taking you somewhere. The pathway is very limited. If you actually have control of a vehicle, it is down one straight hallway or one straight corridor in an open field, which is surprisingly narrow and straight through. It's linear and short, and if a person is driving a vehicle or you're in a vehicle and you have really no control over it, it feels completely on rails. No point are you actually able to feel like, okay, let's go this way, or let's park here, or let's wait. It feels like a giant merry-go-round, and the fact that you have really no control over these aspects does not make the game any better, but actually hurts it in making it more monotonous and just boring over the long haul. Starting out, the game was actually very good, and I enjoyed the first level. But my curiosity of what is happening in the story was never answered, and the continuation of the combat and how it just flare, attack, made the game feel more like a chore. I was waiting for it to pick up again and again and again, but it never did. I guess the best thing would be watching a movie but not wanting to turn it off or walk out because you hope that it will get better. And unfortunately, this game does not. And it's a real shame that all these aspects of a game don't come together better. They even have some environments where it has puzzles to it. But those puzzles, where the environment can either crush you or destroy you, you cannot be manipulated to your way. You cannot choose how you want to interact with the environment at all. And it just comes down again to having to relate to the basic combat structure that has been provided for you. Now, a good option and decision-wise of choice and how to actually play the levels is actually shown in one of their missions, where you come against a giant electricity monster ball of light, and you have to either run ahead of it, and you're trying to escape this giant ball of doom, and you have to fight through all these zombies before it gets to you and it zaps you. Now, when you first see this, you're like, okay, I'll play along, I'll try to run through, and you end up being face slammed by a bunch of monsters. Maybe your skill will be better, maybe it won't. And the fact that you can actually hide in a location, run past the ball to get behind it because it won't kill you immediately, and then you can let the ball go forward and it will kill all the monsters and you can just follow suit, is nice. Whether that was an oversight on their part or actually intended, the fact that they had that basic level of choice in the game was refreshing, and it's really unfortunate they didn't expand upon that option. If there are two ways to complete a mission, one may not be well known and the other is. When we're talking about a tractor mission, when you damage your tractor, it does absolutely nothing to it. You cannot destroy it. But if you let it continuously run into a rock, the driver will eventually be thrown off and killed. Why can I not destroy this? If I figure out while hiding behind a rock that when the shredder runs into the rock that it's damaged and I don't want to risk being hit or killed, and eventually the guy gets thrown off the shredder, oh sweet, I can pick this vehicle up and then drive it through a horde of zombies, that would be nice. But what would also be nice is the availability to be able to shoot it, and being able to kill the vehicle and then having to fight through all those hordes on foot would have been much more of an enjoyable option, even if fighting would have taken longer, because figuring out and finding out choices like that is what makes the game and what makes it like, wow, why didn't I think of this? Why didn't I try to find this out? Players will try to beat scenarios in ways that the developers have not thought of, and the more you limit your game in retrospect to it has to be done this one way, the more enjoyment you actually take away from the player. It doesn't have to be anything large or small, but letting somebody do what they feel naturally they want to do, such as hide behind a rock or take on the shredder balls glazing face to face, that is a choice of a player that should be allowed. Overall, this game has a good atmosphere to it, but the fact that the combat is very tedious very fast, the weapons don't feel heavy and doesn't have proper weight behind it, mixed in with the fact that the story never really properly introduces you into what is going on, nor does it ever actually feel like you have a connection with the environment. While yes, you do interact with some people, you don't have choices, and you don't feel like your choices do matter. If you complete a side quest in one of these missions, it doesn't relate or feel like it shows back into how your main story progresses. It's really just more of a time dump than anything else, or a hunt for extra money to try to upgrade weapons. The weapons are not all that impressively visually, nor are they impressive in how they handle and feel. And this is really unfortunate because the game has a good basis of atmosphere, but it doesn't follow through in any regard. They put a lot of effort into the voice acting, which was nicely done, and the art style direction of the cutscenes was yet again nicely done. The music choice they selected felt perfect for the atmosphere that they were going, but the music and the cutscenes alone do not matter after X amount of hours playing the game. And unfortunately, the sound of the game and how the weapons fire, reload, and handle, as well as the monsters, how they savagely roar or moan or walk or creep, the explosions do feel a little heavy, but unfortunately the explosions actually do very little damage and have very little effect. Has the most power and feels the most deadly, but it actually does one of the smallest amounts of damage. The sounds of the monsters attacking, as well as your own attacking, is not anything that really helps propel the atmosphere, and that is an area which is unfortunate as well. And unfortunately the game itself is not that entertaining to play. You never really feel a sense of empowerment or gratification or satisfaction after destroying or defeating a large horde of enemies because it's so easy. If you open a gate and 40 monsters are coming to you, all you have to do is get them into a little bit of a choke point, throw a flare, and then just stand there and fire your pistol. 2 minutes later they're all dead and it's no big deal. Or take one of your heavier weapons and just mow through them because they're all clustered together. Any way you do it, it's just a continuation of the same thing over and over again with real no variation or capability to deviate from that. So at the end of the day, while this game was headed in the right direction and it has the atmosphere, it's not something I can recommend. There are other games of the genre which may be more interesting, but it is on Steam for $10. If that is of interest to you, then go for it, but I cannot recommend this game. Thank you everybody for watching, for I've been SocioPsycho, and as always, I'll see you next time.